I suppose that in the next hour and a half, we'll talk a little bit more about gas sector, but we'll see. It seemed that the first session was dedicated more to electricity, to renewables, energy efficiency, and we'll see where the conversation leads us in the next minutes. Once again, prepare your questions, be ready to step in and comment on what you hear. So I will start with Joseph Balog. Thank you very much. You will have a presentation, and then I will ask you to come back and be part of the panel. Here it is. We will use the microphone for the recording. You can control the slides from here or from here. Okay, just yes.
So, ladies and gentlemen, very nice to see you, blah, blah, blah. Compared to the previous presentations, this will be a little bit primitive, because I still don't know how to use this, but you don't know it either, so that's good. We will talk about only electricity, but as a little introduction, yesterday with the help of Brother Marius, we did a very quick summary about Hungarian and Romanian gas storages, and I tell you that you have a horrible deal in Romania. Your storages are roughly 3 BCM in total. The Hungarians are 6.5. The Hungarians can get out like 500 million kilowatt hour per day easily. Yours can only do 270, 280. Yet, in Romania, one full circle injection withdrawal cost around €5. In Hungary, this costs €3. So, go home and ask them that why do you pay for a Dacia car more than you get in Hungary for a Ferrari? Number one. Number two, you should really start using the Hungarian storages. This was the end of the marketing, but I mean it that your deal is really not very good. So, administrative points, a few words about Axpo. The only reason I should talk about Axpo is that there are too many Swiss companies around, and 98% of them tends to be money laundering operations, one based in District 6 in Budapest, and we don't name it. This is slightly different Swiss company, not that I also can say several things about other so-called Swiss companies, but this is Swiss in the sense that we are the only one who are really owned by Swiss cantons, and you will see that this will be very, very important in a second. Then you will see that I will use only charts, no text, because I didn't manage to work out how to insert the text, but the last 2 points are important. Unfortunately, sometimes my otherwise boring presentations get some attention, and a few years ago somebody started to send it around in the international press, certain sentences which were taken out of context, and it took us 2 weeks to get it right. And so if you ever find anything which I say interesting, which is unlikely, please contact me and then we will find a way forward. So, this is the short introduction to Axpo. As I told you, this is the only Swiss energy company which is 100% owned by Swiss cantons. The other one which might come to your mind is Alpiq, but Alpiq made the strategic mistake of selling a stake to EDF, which itself is going bankrupt. So the Alpiq arrangement will be rather exotic soon. From this slide, I would only mention that little box in the middle, that extra 6 billion euro was allocated to Axpo. This is on top of 4 or 5 billion Swissy, which we receive from the government, but we don't use it. So there is a lot of money here. The reason why we need all this money is not because we were gambling like others, but actually we were selling forward our own generation. We have nuclear power stations in Switzerland, we have hydro power stations, we have in Italy gas-fired power stations, we have everything with the exception of coal. And we had a policy to hedge these positions, so we sold in 2020 during the COVID electricity for 2022, 2023, and of course we received the margin calls from the exchanges. and that was a little bit unfortunate a few weeks ago, especially 26th of August, which is a real black day in the history of European energy trading, when German electricity year ahead was trading at 1,004 euro per megawatt hour. But all that money is now coming back. So this is the introduction about Axpo. Then first about electricity generation. I mean, I would say 45% colorblind, but even I can see that these two are not at all similar. In Hungary, the big issue is nuclear generation and then gas. In your country, hydro and coal. You can see that the Romanian chart is more balanced than the Hungarian. In Hungary, there is this totally artificial love with Russian nuclear technology. The Hungarian government is the only one left on this planet who believe that the Russians can still build the next new power station in Hungary. And I'm sure they all have their own financial reason to believe so. But this project is dead or dying, whichever sense you wish to use. The next one is in Hungary, and Tamás is the real expert on this. In Hungary, they really managed to mess up completely even the renewable sector. In Europe, the list of renewables starts with wind and ends with photovoltaic. In Hungary, the list is slightly different. It is photovoltaic, and a little bit of wind mixed with some other biomass and all that stuff. Since 2016 in Hungary, it's practically impossible to build wind farms. At the same time, the government, unfortunately enough, was pushing PV projects. So I checked it for today. For today, the Mavir forecast is that around 1,000 megawatt will come from PV. And today is a very good day for wind in Hungary as well, because they will have 40 megawatt, and that's a good day. This was a strategic mistake, and this mistake will cost Hungary a lot in the medium to long term. The second problem is the over-reliance on gas. Unfortunately enough, this country is using around 11 BCM gas, out of which in a good year they can produce 1.5. The rest is all coming with love from Russia, with all kind of funny conditions. And that over-reliance on Russian gas, again, is a huge strategic mistake. But the Hungarian government is the only one who tends to love these arrangements. Maybe you know that Hungary is the only country which managed to sign a new Russian agreement since the beginning of the war. And how they managed to achieve it, I don't know, but I have some ideas which I can share later. So, market coupling, this is where we are all in a bit of a locked up arrangement. Market coupling, originally Czech-Slovak-Hungary, was a reasonably good idea. 2012, 11th of September, I mean, nobody reasonable should ever approve a project for 9/11, but look, here you are. That market coupling made sense, and that was working reasonably well. Then in 2014, unfortunately, Romania joined the show. And when I say unfortunately, I have to say that when you talk about market coupling, you have an underlying promise that everybody will behave like a reasonable business person should. In the case of Romania, and I don't want to criticize you, we noticed that there was enough water in the reservoirs, yet the Romanian hydro stations were not running. The more expensive gas stations were running. The more expensive Romanian gas stations were pushing up the price of HUPEX. And as I later found out, the reason for this was that the hydro generation already went bankrupt once, and there was a little bit of strong, how can I put it, correct control, while in the case of gas, it was possible to share the additional benefit between family and friends in Romania. So since 2014, we are all locked up together in this mess, which we call market coupling. And as I said, this could work, but it would only work if everybody behaves in a rational way. When we see that OPCOM is 500 euro per megawatt hour, and you are sitting on a reservoir full of water, a normal person would run the water and generate. This didn't happen in Romania, and this had a major effect in Hungary. Then we went into madness. Unfortunately enough, the European Union was forcing the market coupling part 2. So now everybody is connected with everybody. The big problem with this market coupling is that the whole project was developed to hide the fact that the German energy system and German energy policy, how can I put it, was messed up. I wanted to use a different word. Germany, with this ultra-green, crazy, brainwashed policy, shut down nuclear stations at just a few weeks before of the war in Ukraine. They are closing down coal stations, they are closing everything, and they believe that they will be so clever that they can produce everything from wind, photovoltaic, and biomass. It's impossible. But the problem is that a previously exporting country suddenly turned into importing, and they are sucking out electricity from Bulgaria and Scandinavia and Hungary and Czech Republic towards Germany. On the other hand, when the show is nice, i.e. there is really a lot of wind, and the German IPEX spot starts falling, suddenly everybody is shutting down the borders, and the electricity never arrives in Romania. So for the time being, what you are doing, you are financing the totally messed up German ultra-green policy from your Romanian generation. That way you are supporting, but you, and also Hungary, we receive nothing back. Because when the electricity is cheap in Germany, then suddenly the local distribution companies are saying that for system stability reasons, we reduce the ATC, available transmission capacity. So this market coupling part 2 is a big mistake. And we only hope that eventually somebody in Brussels will have a little bit of a brain to understand that you cannot link Germany, Romania, and Bulgaria to the same price signal, because the Bulgarian peasant has not seen so much money in his or her life than a German businessman per month. These 6 markets have nothing to do with each other, and forcing this market coupling was a big mistake. Then, Romania and Hungary are both connected to Ukraine. Here, Romania started to take electricity in July from Romania. Interesting that this press release was made on a US web page. So maybe there's a little bit of US involvement here. I don't know, because I'm only an energy trader. You can see US Secretary of Energy. But at least your country made the decent decision of accepting Ukrainian electricity. Hungarian part is intentionally blank. Hungary was the only neighboring country of Ukraine which refused to accept a single electron of electricity coming from Ukraine. Mavir came up with conditions which Mavir knew are impossible, yet they set these conditions to the Ukrainians, and Mavir suddenly discovered that they are a very European company, unlike the country, and they demanded so high standards that the poor Ukrainians could never comply with it. Of course, this is now over, because there is not enough electricity left in Ukraine, but now the other part of the show starts, how to send electricity back to Ukraine. And in this project, again, Hungary is saying that sadly we are gladly we are an EU country and we have very high standards, and unless Ukraine complies with these requirements, there will be no import from Hungary towards Ukraine. Then the regulation, here the two countries are involved in a very, very serious competition. Right now, you are 2 meters ahead of the Hungarians with your 98% tax. I mean, whoever approved that tax is not a responsible politician, but something else. In Hungary, they are also very good in this how not to do it game. Just a few days ago, there was a big announcement that all Hungarian future photovoltaic connection projects will be stopped, referring to the overall state of the Hungarian distribution system. And of course, this argument is not correct. Number one, during the so-called rezsicsökkentés, the reduced priced electricity program, billions were taken from the distribution companies. So they had no cash to upgrade the system for the green version of events. Number one. Number two, Hungary here was doing exactly what my son was doing at one stage. He promised to do summer work, and he asked me to give him extra money in May, which I will get back in August. If you ever had teenager children, you know what happened. Here, what Hungary did, Hungary was sure to get the RRF funds from Brussels. Of course, Hungary is the only country which is unable to access the funds. I always say this, so you will remember forever. The fund, as of today, equals to the total wealth of the 100 richest Hungarians. This kind of money is on the table, but this is the only government which is unable to access it, saying that the EU is asking too complicated questions. The EU is asking questions from the Bible, and don't steal, and if you steal, do it correctly. So this is why it happened that Hungary is perhaps the only European country which is now not supporting PV generation either. And I think with this one, we are getting very close to the Romanian model, but I think yours with the 98% tax on trading is really world champion level. That's how to do it if you would like to kill trading. So, conclusions. Much more could and should and must be done between the two countries, given the location, given the electricity background, given that your gas storages are nowhere as good as the Hungarians. And let's hope that this event will help to achieve this. Market coupling in electricity is forcing us together whether we like it or not like it. So there is no way out of this system for the time being. It would be nice to learn how to work together. Ukraine, for you, is a good opportunity. You have your own mini Ukraine problem with Moldavia, but that's a different discussion. Hungary is really turning away from the Ukrainian problem, and Hungary seems to tends to pretend that there is no Ukrainian border and there is no Ukrainian issue in energy trading, which I think is a big mistake. And finally, energy regulation, we are really getting to that stage when we have enough. And if Romania don't want our money, we will take it somewhere else. Before we make that decision, I hope that some of this regulation will be revised and get right. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Joseph Barrow. Very solid presentation and quite entertaining, isn't it? That's what happens when you have a very irreverent attitude. It is very funny, especially when the joke is made on the other guy and not yourself. But we had, each of us, plenty of those. Thank you very much, Joschka. And we will now, I had some comments also in the serious part of the business, but we'll come to them in the conversation. I will now play the recorded message from our friends in Kawasaki. They are, I used to be better with this. Okay. It is a 7 minutes video message. And just listen, Mr. Cristian Atanasovic, Business Development Manager for Romania and the neighboring countries from Kawasaki.
Thank you, Gabriel, for the opportunity to have this presentation. Sorry I couldn't participate direct to your event, but I hope that, and I'm sure that it will be a very interesting event and very useful for everybody. So, Kawasaki Gas Turbine Europe, it's a daughter company of Kawasaki Heavy Industries Japan. Kawasaki Heavy Industries Japan has 6 big sections. Section called Ships and Offshore, section called Rolling Stock, section called Aerospace, section called Motorcycle, in the brackets. The motorcycle are very well known product of Kawasaki, and section Robotics. The last but not least section is Energy System and Plant Engineering. So this section has a representative in Europe, the company called Kawasaki Gas Turbine Europe. In Europe, our headquarters is located in Germany, Bad Homburg, but we have representative office in Bucharest, Romania, which is responsible for Southeast European market. As a record of Kawasaki Heavy Industries, the turnover of the year 2021 was 11.6 billion euro, and 16% from this turnover is covered by energy division and plant engineering. The main products and services of Kawasaki Gas Turbine Europe are gas turbines, gas engines as products, and the services engineering, starting early from the feasibility study with the concept of the project, implementation and maintenance. Our products are gas turbines with a range of power between 1.8 and 34 megawatt electricity, and gas engines with a range of power between 5.2 and 7.8 megawatt electricity. Our products and services are dedicated in special to cogeneration projects. The main market of Kawasaki Gas Turbine Europe is represented by the industrial sector, where is requested in the same time steam, hot water, chilled water, and electricity, and the urban consumers. The typical applications in industrial sector could be in the pulp and paper industry, could be in the cosmetics, in the refineries and chemistry, food and beverage, and tires automotive. In urban sector, for district heating system, we have a very good products and solutions. Our products and solutions are based on natural gas. So for this reason, Kawasaki Gas Turbine Europe is taking care to the environment, and we are looking very deep to this problem in order to have a very clean air without emissions as possible as it is. Our products and projects and solutions are dedicated due to environment, and high efficiency solutions are dedicated to distributed generator systems. Besides natural gas, we are using also hydrogen. In 2018, Kawasaki Heavy Industries had the startup of the first cogeneration plant in the world based on natural gas and hydrogen. This cogeneration plant has a power installed of 1.8 megawatt electricity and supply electricity to Kobe City, because the cogeneration plant is located in Kobe, supply steam to few industrial customers, and supply hot water to district heating system of Kobe City. We developed a few number of combustion chambers which can burn natural gas in a mixture with hydrogen from 0 up to 100% ratio of hydrogen. This year we concluded an agreement with a German company called RWE, very famous, which is interested to build up a power plant using the biggest gas turbine of Kawasaki, so 34 megawatt electricity power installed, and this power plant will use from the beginning hydrogen. The forecast of RWE is that this power plant will have the startup somewhere in the middle of 2024, and as I told you already, will run based on hydrogen 100%. As personal opinion, I consider that our products and solutions can be very well integrated in a complex energy solution together with photovoltaics, together with and also for district heating, together with all other type of renewables sources. So, if you are facing an actual energy project or a real challenge, please don't hesitate to reach out of us. We provide green and efficient solution. Our energy solution will bring your project one day closer to reality. Thank you very much, and I wish you a fruitful day. Bye.
That was Cristian Atanasovic from Kawasaki. He is a very pleasant guy, and hopefully you will have the chance to meet him someday. He touched the main points he had to do, and I think that at least in part, in respect with the hydrogen interest here in Hungary, some of those ideas might be of interest to you. I will turn to Mr. Tamás Pletzer. Thank you very much for being here with us. He's a specialist in the companies, for the stock markets, and I suppose that from this perspective he will talk a little bit about majors here in the region, not only in respect with the stocks evolution, but also with the fundamentals. Please.
Yes, thank you very much, Gabriel, and thanks very much for the invitation. I would like to talk a little bit today about my experience with the Romanian Neptune project and what I see, what could be the key obstacles here, and what are my expectations here. Because as you know pretty well, this is a long-term story now. As far as I remember, the first discovery was around 2013, so almost 10 years from now. And the project is still not on, which is a kind of a surprise. Now, you know, the project is led by OMV Petrom, as Exxon had exited the project with the other Romanian major company, Romgaz, as a partner. In the past, we said that there was basically three major problems why this production has not been started. The first thing was definitely the gas prices. Now it's a different story now because gas prices, as you know, it's in the sky high. The second problem was definitely the infrastructure, because this project is too big for the Romanian consumption. I mean, your country is still importing like 10-20% of your gas need from Russia, but 80-90% is covered by you. So this project, Neptune, is expected to produce like 3-4 BCM of natural gas per year, which would be too much for Romania itself. So you need a kind of an export. Now BRUA is operating, so BRUA pipeline can take the excess quantities to the neighboring countries, mainly to Hungary, and Hungary can distribute it further to the neighboring countries like Slovakia, Austria, Croatia, and so on. So these two things have been solved. Now there is the third issue, and that's the regulation where I see the biggest problem. Even though Romania approved the new offshore law, I see still a lot of uncertainty regarding the regulation in Romania. But Joska already mentioned with the 98% tax, I see a lot of uncertainty now about either the electricity regulation and the gas regulation. There's still some topics between OMV Petrom and the Ministry of Energy regarding the offshore issues. Now the official date to start this project make the FID is the mid of 2023. I think Petrom needs some time to clarify these issues. What they really want is a kind of a long-term stability agreement with the Romanian government, not to touch the taxation at least for 10, maybe even more like 20 years, in order to touch these fields. The good news is that I think this gas can be produced feasible. There are some examples in the region where, you know, this offshore gas is working. I think the best example was, in my view, is the Tamar project back in Israel in 2012. Very similar characteristics. So 1,000 deep sea, roughly the same distance to the shore. Maybe some people say that the Black Sea is a little bit more tricky because of the wave. There's bigger waves than over there. But I think technology-wise, this is a possible issue. I think OMV Petrom has the knowledge to do this. There was also some concerns that, okay, Exxon has the knowledge, but maybe OMV Petrom doesn't have it. I think they have it. Now there's really the regulation is the key issue. Honestly, sometimes when I think about politics, I see Hungary on one end and Romania on the other end. I remember once the head of OMV was telling me that he likes Hungary because he knows who to call. In Romania, it's always changing. I see the other side. I said, that okay, but we have a lot of bad examples over here with the very strong leadership. So some way between these two extremes would be the best to find the middle way, and I think Romania would need that. We definitely need this gas. So Hungary has a very high exposure to the Russian gas. Probably the country is the most exposed in whole Europe for the Russian gas. I think it's important for Moldavia as well, because Moldavia is highly rely on the Russian gas, and now Putin is, blackmailing them more than anybody else. So definitely there will be a market for that. It's really a proper regulation what is the most important to be needed. So that's now the main story with Petrom and Romgaz. Actually, I work with these companies now almost like 15 years. I got very good relationship with them, and I like them to work with and to analyze them because they improved a lot. Honestly, I think Romania has still a lot of reserves, especially below 3,000 meters on the onshore side as well, not only on the offshore side. So even on longer term, I think the country can be an important player and an important producer in the region. So I see a lot of opportunities going ahead. Yeah, so this is in a nutshell what I wanted to tell you, and yeah, I'm happy to take your questions if you have.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I will challenge you some question regarding other companies, gas companies in the region, in Romania, in Hungary too. And we will do this talking more about gas. This is more politics involved, and it is very appropriate to have a comment from Radu Magdin, who is kind of specialized in these issues. Radu, please, a short introduction of yourself and maybe some thoughts.
Thank you so much. I love this kind of specialized whenever you're talking about politics, because indeed it's such a noble profession. No, but living, although it's a second profession, I think, in terms of age at the global scale. Now, joking aside, I'm honored to be here. I was very happy to see that this event is now done also in Budapest. I've been following closely the events in Moldova, the second country I know best after Romania. It's been a very refreshing panel, and I'll try to, like you said, provide the midway in between being very direct, partially with blah blah blah, partially without, and trying to sometimes find a niche of, I would say, what can be said diplomatically so that we can also advance. I'm somebody who looks a lot at solutions. I remember one of my first conversations with somebody in high-level politics in Brussels more than a decade ago when I was working there. And they said, look, I don't want a solution, just one solution from you. I would like to know what my options are, and I would like to pick the best option. So please provide me options, not just tell me this is the only way forward. And I think it's important to focus in the next few minutes on my side on what are our options as representatives of the private sector. Because I think our frustrations and our opportunities as regards our relationship with our political class or political administrative class are different in nature in Hungary, in Romania, but there are also several opportunities, and I view Hungary and Romania a lot like the yin and the yang. In the sense that, and I think in the next decade we'll be able, if we create trust in between private sector entities, we can go beyond any other elements of competitive paranoia, which historically have been in between the two nations, right? I'll try to have several bullet points in mind and go in a very simple way, like this is the topic, this is how I see Romania, this is how I see Hungary, what can be done in the future. Government and the decade. I don't know what will happen in Hungary at the next elections. Our next elections are in 2024. Do expect for this coalition to work, and do expect for the next government to also likely be a next coalition. Of course, this depends also on personalities, but I think this will be a competitive advantage for Romania in the future. This German-style grand coalition, if I may, with all its difficulties, but nonetheless, it will compensate for one, I would say, strategic, not tactical weakness that Romania has had in the past decade. I know this because the Bulgarians, and particularly Borisov, was always laughing at us, and guess who's laughing now? Our political instability. So I think that good news for those of you who are doing longer term planning with Romania, there will be more political stability in the next decade. Unclear again, I don't know, I can't project what will happen in Hungary. I think Orban is already there for a long time. Good news with Orban, he's admired hiddenly by a lot of people in Romania for being, for taking decisions, for doing a lot of stuff, but at the same time, some of the people in Romania just see this component, they don't see other components of his leadership. At the same time, in Romania, I think we're still caught and will continue to be caught at least for at least 2-3 more years until we get more organized, including the policy machines of the main parties, in this word potential. We also have a joke in Romania, the joke between theory and practice. So in theory, we are a regional leader. In practice, size makes that true, 20 million, and this is one of our competitive advantages also as regards Hungary, and it helps us compensate in a way, for other aspects in terms of decision making. We also have a big advantage, and I think this is the opportunity for private sector operations in Hungary. We are a very free market. And I think this advantage combined with 20 million people, combined with the fact that tactically, geopolitically, but also by instinct, we are, I believe, on the right side of history on the Russian war on Ukraine. I think we're going to see a lot of money coming from Anglo-Saxon circles towards Romania. And I think, speaking of financial opportunities, if you combine part of the consultancy and know-how and project management opportunities that you have here in Hungary with this capital, and not only in Transylvania, speaking of bilateral paranoia, but come and invest more also in the south, come and invest more also in Moldova and so on. I think there will be a lot of things that we can do together. Because if you're looking at history, historically, we've been looking as Romanians at Hungary as, let's say, the more organized brother or partner. It's a reality. We Romanians were very tactical. At the same time, we're living in very tactical times. And we are seeing, I would say, we're capitalizing a lot from the geopolitical position. 1 year ago, if you were looking at the fact that we didn't have a big coalition, and you were looking, for example, at the Romanian prime minister back then, and in the mirror you're looking at the Hungarian prime minister, I would say Orban had perhaps more cards to play. His cards are less right now, and it's going to affect your private sector as well. Like we in Romania, we were periodically affected by our political instability. We still are. In between us, I loved the institutional advice to communicate more with our political stakeholders. The truth is, we are, I don't know if it's the same case here in Hungary, but we are under a strategic problem because it's not tactical. The political class, and here I'll be just as outspoken as Joseph, believes that the private sector is unfortunately partially full of crooks who wants to make too much money, and the private sector pretty much believes that our political class is stupid, / incompetent, / mean. So we need to recreate trust, because if this is our hidden thoughts when entering a debate, it's a problem, right? Because if you don't have a minimal trust to talk about how we rearrange right now legislation. I'll give you an example. We have an emergency ordinance in energy in September, modified at least once in government, now in parliament, likely to be decided in parliament by mid-December. Whereas I was just reading the news, AON essentially said we're losing 9 million RON per day, which is like, I think, 2.5 million euro per day, and this is unsustainable. Right? So how do we create trust in between a political class who believes that multinationals in the past have been making perhaps too much money out of Romania, and the multinationals who are saying, look, this is totally unstable, let's see. How do we make peace? It's our tactical dilemma. But overall, I'm positive. I think it's not by chance that I made the question to the first panel as regards the supply chain on batteries. The truth is, some of the instincts, although we Romanians, we are very, let's say, Euro-Atlantic centric, we are missing out on the rest of the world. we are missing out on exports. And I think that one of the positives, speaking of recreating trust, in the previous government last year, there was a visit by your foreign and trade minister, speaking of assembling things together, to see our economy ministry, and we were talking more about the HEPA model and what we could learn perhaps with our new agencies. I think here is where Hungary is more advanced. I think Romania has historically diplomatic networks and educational networks in the global south, but we're not using them. So again, we're very yin and yang. If you need more cash flow, if you need to do more stuff, I mean, via the Anglo-Saxon, I think it's a good place to set up shop, do partnership. Where we could learn more is discipline, and perhaps also via you a gate towards the Asian century. I think it's a complicated decade. Rather than being paranoid, I think it's much more important to make money together. Honestly, if you're looking at bilateral trade and other stuff, we're much happier if we are richer and happier in complex, weird times, rather than both of us frustrated, and poorer. So friends, let's get rich. Trends are there. Whether we go via you towards Asia and MENA and other places, or you go via us to New York and London, although I know that you have your networks there as well, but you know exactly what I mean. Speaking of global finance, I think we can move things forward, yeah? Thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Radu Magdin. Thank you for joining the very relaxed approach. Please have that seat and allow me to join you here on the table. If you have questions or comments, please allow me to steal one of the microphones here, and please.
Everybody can hear.
Yes, it's better for me.
Thank you for the inputs. I would just like to emphasize on what Radu said about bilateral trade and investments. I would just like to point out that the trade between Romania and Hungary in 2021 reached an all-time record of 11 billion euros. So in July 2022, we reached 8 billion euro trade between our two countries. So I believe, as the speakers said, the private sector can strengthen the relations between our two countries. And trade, business, it's the base of all the collaboration.
Thank you. And I will challenge you, Horia, to maybe work a little more and provide us, the general public, with some in-depth, more detailed numbers on this cooperation in energy service, maybe in a class of activities, something like that. And I will also ask Mr. Kerestes to help us and provide us maybe a list of small-sized companies in Hungary who need projects at the moment. Because there are, I know personally, many companies in Romania who are looking for support in terms of workforce, in terms of knowledge, and that would be an easy match to make, I think. It is just a little bit of effort and cooperation. It would be great if that is happening rather soon. Other comments or questions from your side? I was very well prepared to challenge Joshka with some question on the serious part of his intervention, and it is for the first time in many months that I hear such a thorough comment on the market design for energy in the region and the impact of this market coupling on Romania, on Hungary, etc. It is very frustrating for me, and I suppose that for you also, and especially for people not very educated in energy issues, to see those charts with prices in Spain and France, 2 euros per megawatt hour, 10, 15 euros per megawatt hour, and at the same time in Romania, 150, 250 euros per megawatt. Something is wrong. The market, the common market, is not working. So something has to be done, most probably at Brussels, but the pressure must come from the national level, from the regulators, from the company pushing the issue on the public agenda in order to make some, because I don't think, like Joshka seem to imply, that is mainly a problem of bad behavior from actors in the market. I think that there are institutional tools to be put at work in order to avoid this kind of of problems. Maybe if you have any comments on this part of the market design and the impact on the companies, please.
No, I tend to agree with you. So basically, yeah, I don't think that the market actors we can blame. Definitely, the setup of the market is not perfect, and I see many of the countries which I follow. You know, a lot of uncertainties, a lot of unknown issues, a lot of regulation which is not proper, and definitely the companies, you know, use the opportunities and use these issues. So I followed your presentation. I agree with that you know, some way the industry should explain the politicians what this whole thing is about, and especially in Romania, I see a lot of measures, a lot of steps which I don't really understand why the politicians have done that. So also in Hungary, there's the same thing happened in the past, that we did some regulation which basically harmed the market, harmed the consumers, harmed the government at the end, and then, you know, I didn't see, you know, I didn't see how the government understood these issues. So yeah, a lot of examples of that the market is not designed well, and there is actually a communication problem between the sides. So that's definitely the case. So and now, especially in these times, you know, I receive a lot of calls to explain certain issues on the industry, certain issues with what's happening now. I get much more interest from the public on this, but even the public doesn't know anything about, you know, electricity and those things. So, but they know that we put into the plug, you know, our hair dryer and it works. That's they don't have any clue what the electricity is coming from, what do we pay for. Now they ask, you know, very simple question: if I have a gas bill, what do I pay? I have to explain that, hey, you don't pay for the gas molecule only, you have to pay for the system. So these obvious issues are absolutely not known for the people.
I should add one thing before giving you the floor, Radu. I think that the right direction is in keeping this common electricity market in Europe. There is no other way. There is the normal decision to have a more integrated Europe in terms of energy, in order to have a more integrated Europe in terms of economy and welfare and so on. So we should not be scared of the problems like those that Joshka mentioned earlier, but we should address them and try to find solutions.
Maybe just one comment on this, because I think this year will be a very important one, maybe next year as well, not only on electricity, but rather on the natural gas. So whenever I talk with any traders on the natural gas side, my question is that, will this European solidarity work this year?
Oh, yes, it was one of my questions for you. Yes.
Okay, believe me, I mean, 100% of them said no. If we will have a gas crisis, it will not work. So I'm really.
It seems that on the power market didn't work already.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I wanted to do. The power market showed a little bit negative example, but the general belief is that this kind of a solidarity will not work in the European Union. So if the Germans will have not enough gas, they're going to freeze, we're not going to give them, and vice versa.
What's your personal view on that?
I have also big concerns. I really hope that, you know, the Mother Nature will help us and will bring warm weather.
Okay, let's hope we will not be forced to see.
I'm very much afraid, you know, that especially at the end of the heating season, like February, March, when we've got a very big cold spell over here, we would rely very much on the import at that time, because the gas storages will be approaching the zero level. We can get very low volumes at that time. So we would rely more on the import, and I'm very much afraid that that will be the time when Vladimir Putin can cause a lot of pain for us. And then he will cause a lot of pain for us. For Hungary as well, because we receive the gas from the Turk Stream together with Serbia. That's basically the only country now which is supplied fully with the Russians. I think that will be the time when he will cause pain for us. And also there's a risk that the Chinese would start to buy the LNG on the global market, so there will be not enough LNG either. So that will be a very critical point. I think we have to watch and have to be very, let's say, careful in this time. So in February, March period, watch this period. This is going to be the most critical one.
Yes, and it will test our characters. Please, do you had a comment on the Brussels?
Yeah, on the Brussels component, I worked there for 5 years, and I still keep my network there, in touch with people and so on. And I think there is complementarity there as well. What I noticed, and this is a sign of maturity in our political class, is that although we argue a lot at home, our MEPs in Brussels are very much coordinated. In Brussels on national files. And I think it's increasingly the case across all CEE states and so on. Now, we could have pointed out to, let's say, 5-10 years ago, to several moments where, whether we're talking about negotiations for the EU budget, regional funds, cohesion and others, where, of course, we acted as a bloc. Now, we should all understand, and think this is the challenge for Romania, that by the latest, the end of this decade, we need a change in economic model. Because what we are from right now is a great free platform for people to come in, do stuff, but we don't have an export operation, and we don't really have a state-backed industrial policy. So this has to change.
Quite similar with the idea moving from made in to produced by.
So Romania will have to become more Hungarian in a planning sense. At the same time, there will be the latest in a few months, I would say, immense pressure on Orban to become more constructive. I'll give you an example. You can't keep blocking files in the EU without consequences. Out of principle, it doesn't work that way. First of all, we had at a certain moment in time in our history somebody who thought he's going to be the leader of the Third War and other stuff, and he didn't end up well, but that's another moment in time. No, but what I mean is that even for a medium power, in case you believe you're a medium power, it's hard to do that, to have the traction to do that. And I'm going to give you a very tactical Romanian example. We have this Schengen issue. And the good news for Romania, for Hungary, for other countries is that things are becoming more grayish at the EU level. And because this continuous set of crises are exposing also the hypocrisies in the West. I'm very friendly towards the East. I don't have in this sense. But I'll give you an example. The Netherlands, who keep criticizing us on different files, including Schengen and so on. If you're looking, including in the global media, there is a lack of patience and an active trolling of the Dutch. Whether about Rotterdam, about Russian sanctions, about crime, another kind of issue. So things are becoming grayer, but in a gray environment, victories will happen by helping each other and trying to get positive deals for the club or for the region. So, for example, what we did under the radar, kind of negotiating with the Turks to help the Finnish and the Swedes. So I think the people who still keep in touch with Orban on a friendly basis will tell him, try to be a little bit more constructive. If he becomes more constructive, good things will happen. The same, if Romania gets organized, good things will happen. If not, the future is predictable. Less cash for Hungary, and you will be forced to re-export, or diversify or do stuff. Or in Romania's case, a land for frustration, and unless we have a smart patriotism, we're going to become more nationalist. We're going to have at the next elections our at 20%. Not necessarily, the biggest player, but clearly the population will be frustrated. Because what we lack as a country is strategic storytelling. Hungary is, from my perspective as a former political operator, too ideological in communications. It's losing efficiency due to ideology, whereas Romania lacks a wider story. You remember the slide with the car parts. Why does Romania doesn't say proudly, yes, we do car parts. What's the problem? It's great. We're expert. Why, whereas we actively say, if we say that we are an IT and agri hub, so perhaps our future is agri-tech if I were to make a combo, right? But this is not reflected by economic reality. So we should be honest, and I think it's a good decade to talk to each other, and I think the solution, the way out, and thank you so much for this opportunity, is for us, business to business, private sector to private sector with different hats, to connect, to go beyond any kind of competitive state, paranoia, whatever, and so on, and try to look at things concretely. We have too many problems at our borders right now, and in this context, to argue just for the sake of competition. So let us find solutions together. Yeah? Thank you.
Yes, and I thought earlier when one of the speakers mentions the nasty problem in the Ukraine, that when the crisis will end, hopefully very soon, the nasty problem in Ukraine will stay. We will have a huge input of very cheap electricity from Ukraine when the war stops. And that would be very challenging for this part of Europe and for the companies involved in projects and making plans for 3 or 5 or 10 years. It will be very, very challenging. But
let me just challenge you with the reframing, from this perspective, right? So I would say that one of the things which is lacking in Romania, and Romania I think is more advanced in support towards Ukraine right now, is how we position the storytelling. Because if, for example, we ignore the fact that we in Romania would have a huge problem in case Ukraine wouldn't have resisted to the Russians, and we have seen, would have had this huge problem on Moldova, imagine the pressure on the leadership in Bucharest in case the Russian would have entered, via Transnistria, Moldova, just for the fun of it. So I would say that the storytelling would have to be adjusted. There is an economic compromise. I loved when Joseph, in a very subtle way, said that this came out on an American website. The truth is we are listening to the Americans, and we're going to become richer because we're listening to the Americans. We're not necessarily going to become more influential in Brussels because of that. Because what we, in some circles, we fail to understand in Bucharest is that Western Europe is not 100% aligned with Americans, and we are still living in the fairy tale of the 90s, in Bucharest from this perspective. But I needed to say this. Why? Because there is a risk that we're going to frustrate our people unless we start educating our markets on what is economically savvy, on what is humanly needed, and what is also politically acceptable. Right? I'll give you an example on Schengen. Our people, when Rutte came to Bucharest, said like, "Oh, but we helped Ukraine so much," and we expected what from the Dutch? To get a round of applause, and then to put us into Schengen, despite their geopolitical edge, And what does the Romanian citizens see, in case you're using this kind of argument? See, we also help the Ukrainians, and not, they're not putting us. But this is not the main argument. The main argument should be we're right. Yes, we are helping Ukraine. We should be helping the Ukrainians, right? They're helping us as well. But I think we should try to think about it in the private sector and focus things on interest, make money, be concrete, because otherwise we risk to be derailed. It's a very risky time for malignant narratives.
Radu, allow me to push a little bit more on this perspective from the citizens. In Romania and in Hungary, with the help of Tamas and of yours, in Romania there is a widespread opinion that what the authorities did is good for the people. The prices are lower, there is no, much pressure in terms of gasoline and all that. From your point of view, I understand that you, as a representative of the market and educated in the energy market, you're not necessarily in line with this line of reasoning. What should we tell to the Romanian citizen when he just reads the headlines in a newspaper and says, look, he is a true patriot. He does very good things for his country, for his economy, for his people. Let's do something similar in Romania. What's the answer?
Absolutely. It's very, very difficult because all the political polls were suggesting in Hungary that the strongest message of the last 10 years from Fidesz was this frozen electricity and natural gas bills. So this was, can you imagine, this was the major message for the people. Actually, within Erste, we made some calculations that in 2019, an average Hungarian household spent roughly 1/3 of their income on food and energy bills. Now this went up more than 50%. So
it doesn't work, it seems.
It doesn't, yeah, exactly.
Or maybe it works, but the situation is much, much more complicated, that without such measures, it would have been 70% of the incomes.
Yes, so it can go even higher. So and we don't pay yet the market prices. So the government here made a very strange way of communication. Up to an average consumption level, you still pay the reduced price. After that, you pay a so-called market price, which is not a market price, which is also a fictional price. Actually, in some cases, even higher now than what the market should be giving.
This is the case in Romania too.
Yeah, because they have to some way finance this huge gap between the market prices and reduce prices. So this is the case. Another thing what come to my mind that it's also very interesting for Hungary's future, that the last 10 years, our industry was moving more to the direction of more and more energy-intensive industries.
Because the low prices in electricity.
Because of the low prices of electricity. So some way, what I see now, that this German Central European model is failing. The German Central European model was based on the cheap Russian energy. We were building consumption and also investment goods, which we were selling to Asia, to China, basically. Yeah. So this was the European or the Central European model, German model, and this is failing. This is failing on both sides, by the way, because we don't have the cheap Russian energy anymore. And then also China, if you check, what Xi Jinping said recently after the re-election, that China should rely on its own food. We have to produce everything for ourselves. We don't need the world. So these things is failing. But Hungary, the government doesn't really realize that. What I see, we have a kind of a miracle waiting here. We attracted a lot of battery factories. The biggest one is based by Kettle, by the way, the Chinese one in Debrecen in the east of Hungary. That will consume 800 megawatts of electricity and actually more water than the whole Hajdú-Bihar county. I don't see how we can get the water and the electricity for them.
I see.
So the Hungarian model is failing, and I think I agree with you. I think Orban is going to be much more practical. He was a practical guy. He started, by the way, as a liberal politician.
Yeah.
He moved, one way to another, and maybe he now swings back.
He's more social democrat in policies.
I don't know. I think his policies is more like what I say is more like ad hoc. In some part of their politics is very liberal, in part is very socialistic, in part is very nationalistic. So it's a mixture of everything.
Probably part of this switch to populism that is present everywhere throughout the world, in America also.
Yeah. He listens to the people, and he asks the people in certain questions what is the population's view, and then he adjusts his politics to this direction. So these are the two things what come to my mind.
I would ask you to enter a bit more in another segment, because you gave me an answer in respect to the population. So look at the numbers, statistics, and they show something. What is the impact on the companies? Because from a liberal free market perspective, such kind of intervention should affect the profitability, the value of assets, all that is related with the value of a stock on a stock exchange. What is the situation from this respect?
Well, most of the companies, they suffer, especially small and medium enterprises, like companies that work in the tourism, hotels, restaurants, for example. They suffer because the population will have less money to spend on these services, because they have to pay their food and electricity and household expense bills. Plus, they suffer because of the high prices. I received a call 2 weeks ago from a local restaurant the owner was telling me that he's planning to shut down the shop for 3 months during the winter because he cannot pay those 18 times higher prices what was offered the year before on
These are free market prices.
These are free market prices, yes. So so the industry is definitely suffering. We in Erste just calculated that above 80 euro per megawatt hour. The Hungarian model is not working, and the Hungarian trade deficit will be in a negative territory, above 80 euro per megawatt hour gas price, because that brings the electricity prices together. So basically, this model means that our current account deficit will be in a negative territory. So I think 80 euro per megawatt hour price and above, the country is just sliding down.
Thank you for the comment. We'll still have a few minutes. If any question or comments, please, I will join you. I will come with the microphone. Please.
I was trying to digest some interesting words of Dr. Keresztes. When he said we need a guaranteed 90 euro per megawatt. I'm puzzled from entrepreneurial point of view, because I think the duty of the entrepreneurial world is to look for better products, for better efficiency, for higher productivity, making a better output, guaranteeing something looks like more Soviet style. And we know the productivity and the results of and the quality of the Soviet-style production, guaranteeing an income to the production sites dangerous.
Thank you for the comment. I will just move the microphone.
That's something very important and completely misunderstanding of the whole situation, and that's very critical and not even said or published by anyone in the market, because production of electricity is not a business case, is a well-being of the society, well-being of the people. We cannot deal with this thing like a simple business trade, because if that, you are right, yes, of course, somehow it will happen. But what are you doing when 2 million people are going on the streets and burning out and destroying everything? That's a problem. So it's a well-being, and we need to provide the energy. That's a very basic requirement for the people. And if we want it, then the investments must be guaranteed on a very basic level. But when I'm talking about 90 euros, it's a very poor level of investment. It's still, for a lot of projects, it's still a financial fail. But at least you can do a business plan. The problem on the other side is this 10% inflation, and there was a graphics about the cost of the investments. Well, that was true, but 1 year ago, it's already the trend is changed. At that time, the 1 watt peak cost about 16, 19 dollar cents. Now it's about 30 something, so over 30. So the price are doubled for the cells, watt peak of the modules. The inverters are, I don't know, 50% higher price. The sub-construction more than doubled within a year. So we simply cannot say that on a better technology, because there isn't any progress in the technology. That's I don't know, 1% efficiency in the solar modules. This is nothing. But the key facts that the raw materials are doubled, tripled, everything costs more, the cost of labor costs are tripled.
Thank you. I have to stop you just because we will close immediately this formal part of the day, and then go out and have a little bit of chat together. Please, gentlemen, a short comment from each of you on the future of natural gas. We are talking about decarbonization. There are targets established for each country, for each company, for each of us for the next 30 years, 2050. But at the same time, it is clear that we cannot get rid of gas, at least for 30 years. Do you see a relevant future for this resource, using it in the energy sector over 2050? And we are talking from the perspective of two countries, very, very reliable, which relies very much on the gas. Romania and Hungary have huge infrastructure, huge number of people involved, huge value added in this sector. So what do you think the future holds for the natural gas in the region?
Well, I'm generally very skeptical of all of these green developments and all of the energy transition. This is a much bigger task than people would think about. I read one very good report from Wood and McKinsey, I think, who estimated the cost of the whole decarbonization to be around $275 trillion, which basically means that the world should spend for 30 years 10% of its GDP to be net zero carbon by 2050, which is impossible. I mean, 10% of the GDP is a huge money. I think also in Europe, in my view, there was a lot of greenish ideas, to turn the continent into a much more greener continent. Look at Germany. In 10 years, they cut the share of the fossil fuels from 84% to 76%. So that was the result of 20 years efforts only in Germany. That was basically 8 percentage points. So how can we get to 40% by 2030? That's for me a science fiction. It will not happen. And in my view, natural gas therefore will remain for much longer than what we predict now. In Hungary, for example, I think Mr. Kadariak can tell you better. Hungary had an idea to cut the natural gas consumption basically to zero by 2040. I don't really see, the money and the efforts and the possibility to cut this to this level in such a short time. That's basically 18 years. So the nation has no money for that. So I'm skeptical that the gas would disappear quickly. I think it would remain with us. Of course, the share of the Russian gas should be cut, because especially Hungary, but basically all the countries in the region, like Slovakia, Austria, and Czech Republic as well, who have no seaside, they are in trouble to lower the share of the Russian natural gas. That's the main issue. But I think the role of natural gas would remain here. One more important thing is the storage of electricity. So this is a very long problem. I read an article in the Hungarian Museum for Natural Arts. The Scientific Museum. There was an article back in 1900. In 1900, there was a competition between electric cars and combustion engine. And the article was explaining, it was written by some Hungarian engineers, that electric one will be the winner because the efficiency of the electric car is much, much bigger than the combustion engine. I think at that time was, combustion engine had a 10% efficiency, the electric car at that time had only 40%. And basically the engineers were saying that, the only minor problem what we have is how to store the electricity, but we will solve it. That was back in 1900. So storing, also, I don't know if you know the story, Nikola Tesla, the last 20 years of his life, he was thinking constantly how to store the electricity, and he was a brilliant mind, the very smart person, really know everything about the electricity, and he didn't find a solution. So this is 120 years problem which we cannot solve. And honestly, I don't really see a solution. Those companies I cover, they all have a decarbonization plan. Green hydrogen is basically at the end of the row. This is something what they do, but they have no more ideas, yeah? Because green hydrogen is has very low efficiency. Basically you lose 2/3 of the electricity when you store in hydrogen and you make electricity again. So this means that natural gas will still have a role in the future as a kind of material to store energy and use in the electricity system for balancing power. So I don't see this role to be changing. I don't think that we would have a real big breakthrough over here. If I'm wrong, I would be very happy, because our world very much needs a way to store electricity. That would solve a lot of our problems, believe me. But unfortunately, I don't really see a solution. So something which we find must be, big in volume, cheap in production, and easy to store. Hydrogen is not really feasible here. It's a very small molecule, goes through everything, creates a lot of problems. You cannot really convey it. That's also a lot of people ask me a question: how can we convey, hydrogen? Can we do it like a natural gas? I said, if you want to make your house like Hindenburg back in 1937, then you can do it. Of course, in industrial way, you can do it, because in the industrial way, it has a rigorous surveillance. You know what you deal with. But for households, I don't see as a solution.
Thank you, Tamás. Very interesting to follow your thinking right here with us. Please.
From substance to spinning now. Leaving joking aside, I think it's the economics are not there yet, and you underline this aspect. Also, speaking of options this time, and what do we sell to the population? It's crisis times, and in crisis times you reprioritize in between good/green to have and need to have. because it's simply not tenable. You can't afford to be a prime minister nowadays across countries in Europe and be a Greta 2.0. It's that simple. Or you can be that, but then you can't avoid the winter of discontent. And it's a dilemma, big dilemma, including for the Nordics. We saw this, and I think this is one of the battles where we won, in conjunction also with other countries who had interest, as Romania, on taxonomy, on EU taxonomy, to the dissatisfaction of the Greens, and what we managed to achieve over there. So I'm confident that in this pragmatic environment, we can advance our interest. What Romania needs is to be a little bit more Hungarian. What the Hungary needs is to be a little bit more Romanian. Hungary needs to be a little bit more constructive, because there's going to be a backlash otherwise on this policy. We're already starting to see this backlash, and Romania has to be more assertive. And if I may say so, we should be doing a proper analysis on cutting part of the waste and inefficiencies in the system, right? I haven't seen the economy on what Joseph said earlier, but he, at least from a body language perspective, made an impression on me when he said, "You're really getting a bad deal." I'm not sure if we had an analysis on that, right? But the very instinct is not there yet in Romanian politics, because the country is still rich enough, to be able to afford such a need of analysis. Where do I save this money without doing austerity and so on? So again, we can learn a lot from each other, and including in terms of know-how and networks.
Thank you. Thank you both of you. Thank you, Joshka, not here to challenge him a little bit, maybe the next time. Thank you all of you for contributions, speakers, partners, participants in the audience. I count on you for future cooperation. I count on you for cooperation in similar events. 20-something people here today, probably. We target 50 people in the audience next year in Budapest. I will close with one comment that was raised in my mind by Tamas. Being a genius, Tesla was not genius enough to solve the problem of electricity storage. I am kind of a little bit more optimistic, because what we managed to do at global scale in Europe, in America, and in various places in this world is to compose smart people, to compose intelligences, to compose knowledge, to compose different types of approach in order to produce something better than one people, be a genius, might. So I am confident that we as people in this world are capable to come with solutions rather faster than later in this issue too. Thank you very much.